All right, let's do this. Let's talk about Star Wars. Okay, welcome back to the Real World Podcast. My name is Matt Waters. I am your nerdy host who writes things down, joined as sometimes by Mike Thomas, founder of the Real World. Mike, how are you doing?
Doing very well. I think my schedule is finally opening up and more regular recording and yelling at you from across the Atlantic.
Yes, that is the way that things go. Mike obviously hasn't been as available lately. I have been doing some podcasts with Ben Phillips, and I will be continuing to do so even when Mike comes back, because Ben and I are launching our own little podcast anthology series where we're going through the entire MCU. That will start the first Wednesday in January with Iron Man and will culminate with Infinity War 17 weeks later or whatever. Also, we may have some stuff coming. Me and Mike, we are hoping to do Blade in the new year. We're going to maybe do True Detective finally. And there might also be something coming to do with Lost, which may not involve either of us. But why are we here today? We are here to talk about a little film that came out, small independent film from Rian Johnson called Star Wars The Last Jedi. No longer called Episode 8, I guess, officially.
Oh, really? I didn't notice that.
Yeah, I think I read somewhere that it's just actually called Star Wars The Last Jedi. I don't know, maybe this is a different markets get it called different things type deal. But Star Wars The Last Jedi, directed and written by Rian Johnson, who brought you Looper and not a huge amount else, some episodes of Breaking Bad, Brick, which I haven't seen.
Brick is really good. You like Brick.
Good, I'm glad. And it is the longest Star Wars film to date, and as of this exact second, Mike and I don't know what the other think about it. Let's break that silence right now. Mike, without further ado, what do you think of Star Wars The Last Jedi?
I'll preface this by saying I saw it twice, opening night, and I'd already bought tickets to take my dad this morning, in fact.
Nice. That sounds nice.
I left the first viewing in a daze of confusion and frustration.
Okay.
And I left the second viewing coming to terms with a lot of my confusion and frustration and enjoying it a lot more. I really disliked it the first time. Okay. I really disliked it for the first time, and I have, to the point, and this is probably the nerdiest thing I'll ever admit, I brought a notepad to the second viewing.
Fuck yeah, you did.
Because because I want to be able to properly explain how I felt about the film, so I did want to write about it, because anecdotally on the internet, there very quickly became a divide in reactions to this film.
That did.
And the side against the film, for lack of subtlety, devolved into a lot of questionable lines of argument, revolving around too many women, too much comedy,
of course,
and all sorts of other things that kind of, one, were not an issue for me, and two, were actively good things about the film, as far as I was concerned.
Yes.
And so I really did not want to be lumped into that argument and that side of it at all. So I wanted to be able to articulate my feelings on the film as well as I possibly could. And also I want to, because I think my big criticism of the film the first time was that I was invested and I cared. There were but then just progressively more things happened that caused me to roll my eyes. And then I had to roll my eyes again. And eventually it kind of just lost me. And I lost kind of investment in the story, I'd say, by the final act. And I wanted to try to trace to see how that happened. And I think I have done that, while simultaneously kind of growing to just kind of accept the flaws in the storytelling and kind of also, hey, this is still Star Wars, and I still kind of enjoy it quite a bit. I would say my big overall takeaway was I compare it to The Dark Knight Rises.
Ooh.
It's a 2.5-hour film, and they just do way too much. They just do way too damn much in it. It is 5 hours of storytelling, 5 hours of character arcs, crunched down to 2.5 hours, and you feel it. And there is a lot of contrived stuff with the storytelling. One thing that's a really big issue for me is the biggest one. Well, I'll get into more detail with later. There's information that is kept from the audience that makes no sense to keep from the characters in the story, and it happens time and time again. And that is, I would consider to be objectively bad storytelling. Many character arcs are rushed. I don't know if you and I are going to disagree with it about this. There is what I would consider to be some examples of Deus Ex Machina that are frustrating because I think they're unnecessary. And just some general, big picture stuff. Like I think, like I said, like a lot of plot's rushed. There's a lot more green screen this time, and that was very off-putting to me. I thought we kind of gotten away from that, and it was very obvious when it was happening, and it was a distraction and not something that I particularly enjoyed. Overall, I'm probably more gravitating towards Thumbs in the Middle, and it's an ambitious picture. They really went for it. I think its flaws for me right now overwhelm the fun that has had it. Matt, your turn.
Okay. I think we need to put a lot of pins in a lot of what you just said and circle back around. Because some of that I do really want to get into. Big picture, my immediate reaction coming out of it was there are some pacing issues. There's a lot of stuff in here I really, really like. There's some stuff in here that made me sort of roll my eyes and go, okay. As I've gotten further away from it, while I maintain that the plot of them just ever so slowly outrunning the Empire is kind of silly, as I've gotten further away from it and thought about it and put some stuff down on, not paper, because who uses paper? You nerd. I wrote stuff down digitally with my keyboard. I started to really think about not just this film, but Star Wars generally, and kind of... This made me really reassess The Force Awakens in a way that I didn't expect to. I think I'm going to have to get into that more later, because I think it will come up organically when we talk about like where this film ends and like some of the characters. But the pacing thing is I don't know, it kind of bothered me more in the moment, and now I've sort of gone, okay, fine. It's just the big one is kind of, they're slowly outrunning the First Order because they can track them. So if they jump, they'll use all their fuel, but they are ever so slightly faster than them. So they're basically just out of reach until all their fuel runs out, leaving Finn to go off and have his little adventure. His adventure, I think, is very fun. I think it has a load of very important moments. I think the character of DJ, who we'll get into the cast, I think it's all great. It's just it kind of feels fundamentally at odds with the urgency of their situation. It's something that comes up in a lot of fiction. I'm going to lose Mike here, but if you like Star Wars, you might like the video game series Mass Effect. The third one of those, it introduced a plot device wherein, like, right, we need to do things right the fuck now because urgency, but off you go to have all these like side adventures that, while they were welcome in the middle chapter, are not welcome in this third one where everything is like, crazy. To bring it back to Star Wars, it just, I don't know, it seemed like a fun little adventure that was absolutely, I love that they did it. It's just, it felt a bit at odds with, it kind of belittled the First Order are about to kill us all aspect in a way to me. And I kind of wish they'd found a way to let Finn still do this thing without it leading to a situation that's almost comical as you see these two ships just slowly crawling across space, and you're like, yeah, we've got 16 hours till we die, we've got 8 hours till we die, we've got 2 hours till we die, while Finn is off at a casino with magical animals and stuff. That was quite a negative stretch of stuff. I do actually ultimately think very positively of this film. This is one of my more favoured Star Wars films, and I think the only way to explain that will be when I say how that made me think about The Force Awakens. But I don't know if you want to talk about the pacing, as I've just raised it for about 3 minutes.
Yeah, I guess actually well, we should rank our Star Wars at the end, I suppose. Just after we finish this conversation.
I'll improvise that ranking.
Yeah, the pacing's a problem.
Yeah.
The premise is that they have just enough fuel to keep going. Mm-hmm. They have enough fuel for one more jump to light speed. The First Order, I don't think it's a question of speed. It's more just a question of, like, they can't penetrate their shield for some reason.
But I think he does say that they're faster than us, so they can outrun us. Well, ever so slightly.
It's like, from a practicality standpoint, could you truly, like, get them at this point? Is it worth the risk of getting that close to them? I guess would be the idea. It's like, why rush it when we know we will outlast them eventually? There's nowhere left for them to hide. And, okay, okay. Like,
Yeah.
let's just say we accept the strategy behind that.
Yeah.
As a film, it's really awkward.
Yeah.
And it leads to a lot of stupidity. And obviously, there's always shortcuts that have to be taken in storytelling, pretty much, especially with a story of this size. But to take all those shortcuts for this is kind of stupid.
Yeah.
We could come up with something more clever than this.
I just think it hurts the urgency, like I said. Like,
yes.
you know, all these characters we really care about and who are important are going to die, and it's like a matter of time. But let's cut away to Rey training with Luke. Let's cut away with Finn and the casino. Let's cut away to Kylo and Snoke. And, well, that's less of a bad thing given the circumstance. But, you know, every time you move the story to another viewpoint, it kind of undercuts the urgency.
Yeah, and I think that kind of leads me to... I think I'm going to bring up one issue now before we jump into the characters, and that is the plot, or the planning by the main, let's say, ship commanders, and the way that information is revealed to us, the audience. And it starts off early, and I remember one of the early scenes when the First Order escapes from the excellent opening sequence, by the way.
Yeah, really good.
Rewatching that really kind of sucked me back into it. Really put me in a positive place and left me far more open-minded about trying to like the film, because the opening sequence really is spectacular. They escape, and Huck says we had them tied on the end of a string. And he's using a metaphor here. And generally speaking, when you're writing a line like that, and you're speaking not necessarily in code, like with a purposeful code, but more just metaphorically in code, you're saying it because the person in charge is letting everybody else know, hey, we got this. I'm not going to tell you why, I'm not going to tell you how, but we got this. They are tied at the end of the string. That's all you need to know. They are almost literally tied at the end of a string. Their technology has just increased tenfold since the last movie, and they can track through light speed. That is not something you need to speak codedly about in General Hux's position. That does not need to be something that is a secret. That's only a secret so that the audience doesn't know why they're being tracked.
Yeah.
And right away, that kind of sets the tone for a recurring issue in the story, which is to increase tension, the movie purposely keeps information from us by purposely keeping information from characters that doesn't make any fucking sense whatsoever. And then it happens on the other side, too, with Laura Dern keeping information from Poe. And I think they have a decent conceit for that, which is that Poe is a little too impulsive, and thus we're afraid he'll do something stupid if he knows the information, knows the plan. One, I don't quite buy that as legitimate, but I think that's firmly established in the story, at least. That's okay. But one eventually does get to the point where clearly Poe is demonstrably more dangerous by not knowing this information, and they still keep him in the dark as to the real reasons they're doing everything. And at this point, it all builds to this moment, because they kind of set Laura Dern as being like not incompetent but stupid and unnecessarily stubborn, and it's kind of a cliche like executive person that takes over halfway through a movie for the person that really should be the person in charge. And it's they're playing with this cliche here, and it turns out, of course, that she was a hero and blah 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 blah. But they go too far at one point. When Poe finally reveals the plan, she goes like, wait, what do you mean? Some stormtrooper and a whoosy-whatsy are going to try to save us? Like, that is a line of dialogue that you write when that person actually is just a blatant, stubborn asshole. That is not a line of dialogue for Laura Dern's character in this movie. That's not her. Like, there's not wanting to willing to sacrifice herself to not seem like a hero, but that's a shitty piece of dialogue that tells me you were trying to keep information from the audience. That character would never talk like that based on what we know about her. And it's shitty storytelling to just kind of decide, okay, we don't want the audience to know this yet, and we don't have a good way of doing that, so we're just going to have characters speak in code and lie for no reason whatsoever. It's artificial tension that really doesn't hold up well. Not the first time or the second time. But okay. Do you want to reply to that before we dive into the characters?
It bothered me more with the bad guys than the good, to be honest.
Yes.
Like, it seemed like you would you would absolutely all know how you're doing this on your side of it, the tracking, and it's just unnecessarily obtuse. I see why they did it on the good side, where it's about Poe learning lessons about, how things are done, and like I think it'll come up when we talk about the characters, but yeah.
I think it's a good arc for Poe, to be clear, but I think it's forced storytelling. It's almost like in the middle of this life or death war, they conspired. Let's make sure we teach Poe a lesson while we're doing this at the same time, like while we're trying to keep everybody alive.
Well, I read it more as like, we're trying to win. We're fighting the bigger war here, and you have a singular mind and a singular vision, and like you're not. This is above your pay grade, son, kind of thing. I don't think they were trying to single him out and teach him a lesson so much as.
Well, I know, but it was. I'm not saying they're literally doing that. I'm saying the storytelling almost to buy into it. You almost have to think that was the plan. Yeah. I mean, like he was a commander an hour before. Like it's not like you can understand them keeping information from Finn. He just joined a week ago. Like yes, he's gone in tight with everybody. He's in the command deck for some reason, but like he literally just joined a week ago. Like there, not much time has passed based on what it like can't be more than a month tops.
Sure. Kylo's face is still scarred and everything.
Scarred. Not everything's happening at the same time, but Rey couldn't be with Luke more than a month.
I took it as way less than that, to be honest.
I did too, but I'm trying to give them a little bit of a grace period there. Yeah. But I just and like I said, it's you do that, like it happens in the story sometimes, but for what purpose? And just to make them all kind of look like idiots at the end, like this was their big secret plan that we're just gonna sneak away. Like, yes, you maybe have like technology cloaks, but like, did you think no one would just see you? Didn't you think it was a possibility? And you're all kind of like relaxed on these shuttles as you're flying away to the salt mines or whatever the hell.
That's such a classic Star Wars thing, though, of like, we could just look out the window. No, the scanners.
No. And like for it to all build to that, just kind of made them all seem kind of stupid too. I think these are pretty significant script issues that really knocked the movie down for me. But anyway. Shall we dive into the characters probably a bit more?
Sure. I don't really know what order to do them in because I think the logical would be like Rey, Finn, Luke, like in order of like the significance of the characters. But I think some of them sort of go together in nice little groups in a way.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And unlike the last one, Rey was very clearly the lead of the last one. In terms of screen time with this one, I wouldn't be able to, off the top of my head, really narrow it down. But let's dive into the heart, which is Rey and Luke.
Okay. Daisy Ridley is... There's still a little bit too much Hermione Granger. She gets very British at times. She's a little bit shaky, but I do think that she has really good chemistry with both Adam Driver and Mark Hamill. And I think the biggest talking point with Rey is the revelation that her parents are in fact nobody. And I think this has split fans down the middle. Some people are sort of offended that it means that just any old schmuck can, take on the mighty, like, Skywalker blood, as it were, and anyone can just go be a Force Master. But I think that's the entire genius of it, that Rey is you, Rey is me, Rey is Spider-Man, Rey is any kid. And that's why they end on the shot of the kid looking up at the sky and dreaming of being Luke Skywalker. And I think it all ties in with the larger message of the film. And, I kind of just need to say this because I don't really know where to slot it, but I think the line that Rose says, and we'll talk about Rose later, just before she, passes out, she says, the way we're going to beat them is by saving the things we love, not by, killing the things we hate. And that line kind of resonated with me, and it made me start thinking about The Force Awakens and how that film is a copy of Episode 4 in some ways, of A New Hope. And I am in the camp of people that don't like that it is like a complete replication, or I have been. And then I thought about it as what if the point was, and this, I'm kind of spoiling stuff for every character here, but I kind of need to tie this all together. A huge theme of this film is sort of throwing away the old ways and sort of going against arguably what has been Star Wars for a long time. And, you know, you have it with Yoda destroying the Jedi, the original Jedi Temple, which Luke was going to do. You have Luke saying, you know, it's arrogant to say that, you know, the Force dies with the Jedi. And you have Kylo killing Snoke and saying, you know, let it all die, get rid of all of this stuff. I think the idea is that these things keep happening. Like, you know, we had this big triumphant victory at the end of episode 6, where, you know, the good guys have won and the Empire is defeated, and then we open in episode 7 and it's, I don't know, 30 years later, and basically the Empire is back. Like, the First Order are huge, massively organised, all this stuff, huge force, massive force in the galaxy, and we're right back where we were, as if none of that happened. And that annoyed me, but I think the idea is that, you know, this cycle will keep repeating as long as it's about Jedi versus Sith and, you know, this ongoing battle of the old ways. And it's not as simple as the good guy beating the bad guy, as Luke killing the Emperor. It's about a larger change. And this idea that, you know, cutting off the head of the snake with the Empire, that doesn't mean they're gone forever. There's, you know, how many people worked for the Empire? That's thousands, it could be millions of people, I don't know. And it's sort of a state of mind, and I think that's where this Rose line comes in, and it's about a wider sense of change, and I think it's about inspiring this new generation, which is why you end on the shot that you do with the kid. It's why it's important that Rey is just anybody, and I think it might even, I might be giving them too much credit, but it might even be like a metaphor for life, when, you know, we're going through some very turbulent times right now with stuff being brought out into the open that has not been talked about, and frustrations with sort of social changes that aren't happening quickly enough, and how it isn't about, you know, it's not as simple as if we go, like, get the bad guys, all good things will triumph and it will be great. It's a slow thing that is a collaborative effort, and it will take everyone working together and loving each other. And I have lost myself in my own point here, but I liked all of that stuff I just said, and I think it all ties in with Rey's little journey, and it starts with her being nobody.
Yeah, I think one thing we had to caution is the source of that information, though.
Well, exactly. I mean, yes, massive asterisk. Kylo tells her that her parents are nobody. He believes it, she believes it. It doesn't mean it's true. Who knows what J.J. Abrams will do with Episode 9? But for right now, the only information we have is that Rey's parents are not special. And
that's actually a quick side note is, I think, you know, who knows what J.J. Abrams is going to do Episode 9. I imagine J.J. Abrams had no fucking idea what Rian Johnson was going to do with Episode 8 based on what Rian Johnson does with Episode 8 and based on what J.J. Abrams does with Episode 7.
Yes. Kind of kicks J.J. Abrams in the balls a little bit with his film.
Yes. And it's not I'm not saying it was wrong. It was a bit jarring in the sense that it feels like we have different filmmakers telling this story, and we have filmmakers making do with what the person did in front of them, which is one of those strategies that could work, or it can kind of make things feel like an incoherent mess.
Yeah.
And I think this was a bit of both.
Sure.
Like, I think when J.J. Abrams ended on that beautiful shot of Rey holding out the lightsaber for Luke, I don't know if he intended for Luke to just toss the lightsaber away.
I forgot
it was It was a fantastic moment.
Yeah.
And I think it worked, and I think it was for the best.
Yeah.
But I could, you know, probably point to about a half dozen other things that were kind of more like, what? This kind of completely does not really jive with what we just happened. He just killed Han Solo. Are we already going for the redemption? like it's not cohesive. It's not cohesive, and I don't think that's the end of the world, but I think it's worth noting. Anyway, yes. So what you're getting to here is actually something that I'm hoping to write a formal article about that does not involve numbers and lists and things like that.
Whoa!
Which is
we do those
once a year. Once a year. The way you brought it up means we're going to jump to Kylo Ren and have to come back to Daisy Ridley.
Sure, absolutely. I will talk about Kylo all day.
That's fine. I think Kylo Ren has kind of served both as a character and as a kind of meta commentary on Star Wars, as a substitute for the fandom of Star Wars and the love of Star Wars. Because he, as a character, had to live up to Darth Vader, like, for fans. But then, so what they did to kind of twist on that is that he, as a character, in his own mind, was trying to live up to Darth Vader.
Mm-hmm.
And so he dresses like him. He gets a stum helmet that he doesn't actually need to breathe. He just thinks it sounds cool.
Yeah.
Like he gets a red lightsaber because he thinks that's what Darth Vader does. And it's like that's what like fans' imagery of what a bad guy should look like. Mm-hmm. That's what fans' expectations of what the bad guy of Star Wars should look like. And this film kind of throws that in our face and in his face too very effectively. Where it's just kind of like, get that, like where Snoke says, get that stupid fucking helmet off your head. Like
you're a child in a mask.
Yeah, and like that's of course is exactly what he is. And so it becomes kind of like this. His whole story then becomes, why the fuck are we hanging on to any of this old shit anymore?
Yeah.
Like, what purpose does it possibly serve? How do we benefit at all from hanging on to this? And they also tied into his huge, formative moment in his life, which is where it looked like Luke was going to betray him and kill him as a kid.
I love that moment.
Except for the terrible makeup on Mark Hamill, it was a great moment.
Hey,
he looks really goofy there. He looks really bad there.
Well, Mark Hamill hasn't looked like Luke Skywalker in like decades. So
yes, they had a really rough time making him look like Luke Skywalker. And I think that's a really great journey for the character. I think it's a great commentary on Star Wars as a whole to kind of weave that in there. Yeah. And I think it's done fairly well. Yeah. Rushed. It feels, as we'll get into, this film often kind of feels like they were trying to do Empire and Jedi all in the same movie.
Yeah. Well, I sort of forgot to say in my criticisms of the pacing, I do think the throne room scene where Kylo and Rey have their big, who's going to turn, they both team up, only for it to go the other way again. That felt like such a natural conclusion to me. And it's not that I don't like everything that followed on Crate and everything. It's just, it felt like that could have been saved for episode 9. It's a weird criticism to say, hey, you gave me too much good things, but too many good things. But no, I think it felt like a cathartic and stop moment.
And I mean, it's not an inappropriate criticism. I mean, it feels like this film has multiple climaxes. And that's one of them. Yeah. And it felt like the end of the movie, I thought they were going to end on the cliffhanger of Luke walking out just based on the pacing of the movie. Yeah. I wasn't even convinced we were going to see that conclusion there.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like almost like Rian Johnson was like, right, I have a very specific vision for what I want to do here, and I know I'm not doing the next film, so I'm going to put as much into it as possible to a point where you could almost end... I mean, you couldn't end the entire story at the end of this, but he kind of creates an ending that is very sort of final. It's like he got his 2 films worth in one almost.
It felt like the transition to the next trilogy.
Yeah.
It felt like the transition to episodes 10 through 12. Which again, doesn't necessarily... They don't have to do it the old way. I think that's the whole point, kind of, really. I mean, my biggest criticism of Force Awakens the very first time was, oh my god, do we really have to reference everything all the time? Yeah. Like, can't this film stand on its own? Do we need to really ham-fist Death Star blowing up at the end of this for no reason? That's not what this film was about.
The new Death Star was the one where I was like, this is too far.
Yeah.
The exact same fucking...
It was the pig snout man of Rogue One. I'm just like, okay, this is a step too far. We don't need to run into everybody.
Yeah. So I've taken us away from what you were saying.
No, it's okay, because I think Kylo, but they ridiculously rush his story here on several fronts. One, he has a big moment early on. He is dead set on destroying his past, and right away he's forced to confront that with is he going to kill his mother right now?
Yeah,
and he opts to not do it.
Mm-hmm.
That also could have really been a fantastic climactic moment for his character.
Yeah.
But they rush it 5 minutes after he's decided to burn down the past.
Yeah.
And then, we'll get into this almost definitely later, but it's too relevant for this. It then appears that she does die. Because he hesitates, and his companions, shoot what he was going to shoot anyway.
Yeah.
And she is sucked into space.
I think this is the most divisive thing that happens in this film.
I would hope so. And on the maybe we'll discuss the whole thing a little bit later, but on the Kylo front, there is no reaction to this whatsoever.
Yeah, I would
This
love to have
whole-
seen what he did.
There's no reaction to this. We see no effects on him. That whole moment should have been about him,
Yeah,
and instead we see nothing.
yeah,
And I think that kind of gets to a lot of the pacing issues of the movie.
Yeah.
Is that there's no time for Kylo to think, "Oh my God, my mom just died."
I know, right?
There's no time for that in this movie,
Yeah.
and that is an issue. That makes the movie feel less satisfying, and it's frustrating. It's really frustrating. As I was God, this is really, now we're really getting off track. We might as well just discuss the later thing. But I was watching The Two Towers yesterday,
Okay.
and the movie took 5 minutes for King Theoden to mourn and bury his son, who was not a character in the movie but had just died off screen. And I'm noticing it more and more. Movies are killing off characters and then not taking the time to mourn them, especially in these big blockbuster movies. It happened big time in X-Men Apocalypse with Scott's brother. It's like, can we get a shot of him looking at the grave of his brother? Can we get a shot of Magneto looking at the grave of his wife and daughter at the end of that movie? It's like, okay, yes, we've gotten through all the we saved the day and all that stuff, but can we take a moment to grieve?
Yeah.
That is, like you say, we're kind of, it's almost like studios have gotten the message, okay, we can't kill characters and bring them back to life willy-nilly. Okay, now we need to send another message. You actually have to, if you're going to do death, do it right. Anyway, so that was real subject. But I think it's really important that Kylo does not.
Yeah.
His reaction to that is a huge moment. He just fucking killed his father. He just vowed to burn down the whole past, essentially, like that. That he doesn't do it. He thinks he dies. He must rationally think he dies anyway. There needs to be a reaction to that.
Absolutely.
I mean, hell, that could have been a perfect way to end the movie for his character, considering the first one ended with him killing his father.
Yeah, he could off all three of the original cast in one movie after the other. That would have been
a questionable storytelling decision, but it would have been, especially, I think in this case, it would have been, well, to me, what would have been better is if it was the climactic moment, it all builds to him whether or not he's actually going to truly burn down the past. Will he truly burn down his mother? And then he doesn't. And then that sets up his final story in the final film. Especially if she dies anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway, so
I love Kylo. I love Adam Driver. I controversially will take any juvenile internet insult that is going to come my way. He's a better character than Darth Vader. He is,
of course, he is
infinitely more complex. And I feel that the direct comparison which you referenced that they put into the story, which is smart, I think, means that there's going to be a sector of fans that are never going to like Kylo Ren. There's a sector of fans who, the other side of it, are annoyed that Rey can fight Kylo Ren. They're like, no, he must be a mighty, all-powerful Sith. And then, the whole emo Kylo Ren thing, the internet will have its fun. But I love this character. I love how much, and I think Adam Driver does such a good job of selling the internal conflict, which is something that is not visited enough in Star Wars. It's very black hats versus white hats. It's good versus evil. It's, we'll come back on this with Luke, but, to see this character who, he is a boy who he's making rash decisions and then he's forcing himself to commit to them even though he's conflicted. I just rewatched some parts of Force Awakens while eating dinner before this, and the scene where he kills Han, I know what I have to do, but I don't think I'm strong enough to do it. Will you help me? And of course, he's not talking about switching sides. He's talking about killing Han Solo. And just, you see it that this is a kid that, he's lost. He's angry. He doesn't know what he's doing at times. And I think Adam Driver is really good at, you feel sorry for him, and then in the next moment you think, what an asshole this guy is. And I think that's very real, and it's what I liked about what Rogue One did with these more morally grey characters, where, Vader is just evil until he's not. Yeah. And Adam Driver, Kylo Ren is a human being, or whatever the Star Wars people are. Yeah, I love Kylo Ren. I could talk about him all day, but yeah, I thought it was good here. I loved the telepathic conversations with Rey, which might be how we get back to Daisy Ridley. I thought they had really good chemistry in all of those. where they sort of, are reaching out and communicating, and the nice touch of, the shot in the trailer where he's sort of standing in that giant viewing window, that one, I really like that shot, and the final one where, no, it's not the final one, he pulls his hand away and it's wet when it was raining where Rey is, and it's like, this is all pretty cool. One weird thing, he's topless at one point, and she asks him to cover up, and now that, because I think a popular theory was that they were brother and sister or something, or maybe cousins, either way, related. Is another way to maybe read this, if we take his word that her parents are nothing, that she is awkwardly attracted to him physically while still thinking he's an asshole. I don't know. I like that scene. I like all of those telepathic conversations.
Yeah. I think their journey together, I think, actually ended up probably being the real heart of the movie for me. Yeah. That was probably the thing I got most invested in. Yeah. We'll talk more about Luke and Hamill in a second, but this kind of transitions to that. Mm-hmm. And I wish I got more time. I really wish I got more time.
Do you almost wish that Finn, etc., weren't in this film? And
it's funny, going into this movie, I had a hard time thinking, how does Finn possibly fit into this story? What is his story here? And everything about his story feels rushed and kind of tacked on, unfortunately.
There's just so much to dig into with Rey, Luke, Kylo, Leia, Hux, Snoke, I guess, and there's
you haven't even mentioned Poe, and Poe probably gets the clearest arc. That's the easiest to kind of parse through, and probably the most effective in the sense that it was a small scope and they executed all of it. Mm-hmm. But everyone with these much larger and more important arcs really don't get the proper time. And we're going to get to Finn, but Rey and Kylo, this is the heart of the movie right here.
Yeah.
And they really have to rush that confrontation with Snoke. They really have to rush either of them feeling comfortable, like them making a decision. They have to rush Rey even feeling like, I can go save him right now. That action, that decision is a rush decision.
Yeah.
He just killed Han Solo.
Yeah.
You should be making that decision with more than just the fact that, you lost faith in Luke. Your faith in Luke has nothing really to do with that much. It should not be so. They should not be so tied together.
I do think they have the get out clause of they were literally in each other's heads kind of thing, and I just liked how those were played, where they were initially hostile to each other, and he's reaching out and trying to get her, and she's hurling insults at him, and by the time they roll around towards the end, they both just kind of accepted it, and it's sort of serene.
Yeah.
And I love the way he talks about her, he will list all the ways she's trash or whatever, and be like, but not to me.
It's a typical shitty fuckboy way of talking to a woman. It's great stuff. Now,
Kylo Ren is problematic masculinity born as a character.
He is, but he is also the bad guy, at least.
Yeah, no, exactly.
And, that's the charming rogue is not a fuckboy in this movie.
Oh, he absolutely has to die and not get vindicated. But, I do like his character and his journey.
So Rey, that kind of leads us to Rey and Luke. I like what they did in theory, which is that really it's more about Rey training Luke than Luke training Rey. It's, Rey has to resurrect Luke in a way. And through that, they do that by kind of tearing down the myth of Luke Skywalker, which
justified
for me is an odd note to play personally, because Luke was never this all powerful Jedi to me.
No,
Luke was just kind of like the last one left.
Mm-hmm.
He was more of an average Jedi in terms of talent. Is how I always perceived them. It was more just like, hey, he got the training of the two of the best ever. He's the last one left. He's our only shot. He's not the chosen one.
No. But he is the protagonist of these three iconic movies, so he will forever be locked into that role.
But in that way, it makes more sense, which is that Luke probably never had the capabilities. He was a brat. He was impulsive. And, his mistakes are being remade. He was probably never capable of doing this.
No, exactly. And especially by himself.
Yeah, and I think I wish that story had more time to play out. And unfortunately, I have to say it, I wish it was in the hands of an actor who had a wider range to go to.
I mean,
he's really great at the comedic moments. He's really he's got really good timing.
He does. He always has. It's his background with like musical theatre and stuff, and the voice acting. Yeah.
He's really got the scene with the leaf, and he's pretending Rey has the Force is really is my favorite scene in the movie.
Yeah.
The only thing better than that is Finn's "and may the Force be with you" in the most genuine, polite way that he's trying to because he just doesn't get the Force. I love how Finn's the outsider who movie after movie just doesn't understand how the Force works or when are the right moments to say, "Well, use the Force." I think that's probably my favorite recurring gag. Anyway, Hamill does not sound like a human being at times. He does not have natural delivery.
I think this
Chewie,
is
what are you doing here? It's
Chewie.
Yes, it's really, for every moment he nails, then there's another moment that just you can't act, fucker.
Yeah, he's not a very well-rounded actor, and it's why he went from being Luke Skywalker to being, oh, did you know he's the voice of the Joker?
Yes.
I think this is his best on-camera performance I've seen. I don't watch that original trilogy as often as I know some people do. I don't have it on repeat in my head to just summon up. But just as a cursory sort of scanning of my memory, I don't think he really does a huge amount in that original trilogy. He's just sort of the lost, doe-eyed boy amongst these better actors and etc. And this was the first time I was like, oh hey, Mark Hamill's doing some acting. But then, as you said, it is always followed by something really bad. I think the stuff with Rey is I mean, I know all he does is talk to Chewie, R2, Rey, and Ghost of Yoda and Kylo, but the stuff with Rey I thought was all pretty good. His explanation of what the Force is and how that all works, I think, was a far more effective explanation than they've ever offered before, and certainly it's preferable to midichlorians. Which I will say, if you are hanging on to the idea that Rey's parents have to be someone significant, that is basically the same argument as midichlorians in that it's measurable and tied to divine right or anything like that. If you're saying that only these people can do it, you're in favour of midichlorians, I'm afraid. No, but I like Luke here. I like that moment of hesitation and that kind of, is he going to kill Kylo? And the way that they show you that scene multiple times from different viewpoints and everything. And his admittance of it to Rey that, I thought about it. That was more pathos than Luke Skywalker has ever had before. And, you talk about Rey sort of, in a way, kind of tearing down the myth of Luke. I thought that was great, showing this. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm a broken record here where I criticise whenever they're pure good versus evil, and that's why I like Rogue One, etc., etc. But showing Luke as a more human individual with this kind of conflict and internal reflection and guilt and hesitation and doubt, he wants to burn down the temple and then he can't do it, and then when Yoda does it, he's almost oh no, don't, and it's I thought it was
so Luke Skywalker.
Yeah, exactly.
So Luke, I'll address a couple things you said. I think Hamill is harmed in the original trilogy by being surrounded by Ford and Fisher, who are just charisma machines.
Yeah.
And I think he does better work than he's given credit for, but it's nowhere near on the level. I mean, he's surrounded by Ford, Fisher, Alec Guinness. Billy Dee's a charisma machine, if nothing else. Vader is Vader. Ian McDiarmid was already the Emperor. He's the weak link in terms of the acting.
Yeah.
I do think, though, he does a better job than he's given credit for. And also remember, you can't be actively bad and those movies work. At the end of the day, those movies revolve around him.
Yeah. And
he gets the job done. And I think that's how I describe it here, is he gets the job done, but it is, I think of the three returners, Ford is leagues ahead of the other two. Fisher just is too... We'll get to her, but, her energy has just been sapped out of her due to declining health. And, she just doesn't have the spark that Ford had, or that I think Hamill, for the most part, still has.
What do you think of Luke, the final confrontation, with him walking out and, the reveal that he's not actually there? I really liked it. I thought it was Like you said about this myth that Luke Skywalker is the greatest Jedi, while there's merit to that, it was also, if that is what you're trying to say, this is a far more effective demonstration than you've ever done before, that he is capable of sustaining a ghost image or whatever from planets away. Because they do the thing where when Kylo and Rey first join minds, Kylo says, "No, it's not you doing this, the effort would kill you," which I guess is to pay off that, Luke dies immediately after he drops this image. But I thought they got me. I didn't see it coming until it happened.
They got me too, but this is what I'll say to that. If the rest of the movie had been extremely cohesive and tight, I would not have bought that Luke Skywalker showed up out of nowhere from the back of the mountain, But at that point, I'm just like, okay, whatever. All logic's been out the window for an hour now, so why not? Why isn't Luke just showing up with Just for Men done on his facial hair too? At that point, I'd really lost all faith in the cohesiveness and the logic of the movie and the internal logic of the movie. So that is why I was like, okay, this is absolutely what happened. This whole movie feels like fan fiction. Of course, Luke Skywalker showing it up to have a duel.
But then
okay, I think if you're choosing between is it actually Luke showing up and they have an actual duel versus what we got, then what we got is obviously better.
Yes.
And I'll tie this back in with the magnificent flying Leia. I don't like it when heroes have a super secret power that they don't reveal until the most convenient moment possible.
Fair enough.
That is almost by definition Deus Ex Machina. It is shitty storytelling. I think I don't think we need to copy and allude to the original trilogy, but I think there are lessons from the original trilogy we should stay true to, which is, these guys are hanging on by a thread. They are scrapping, and they are just getting by enough to survive and keep the fight alive. They are not superheroes. And the magnificent flying Leia is a superhero moment. Luke Skywalker being the first Jedi ever to
that we know of,
within the rules and internal logic of the show, of the movie, is the first Jedi ever to project an exact replica spectral image of himself. When Yoda can't do it, when he hasn't been using the Force in 20 years, when there's no evidence he knew how to do it beforehand, is shitty storytelling.
Well, it's because he was on the sacred Jedi island, obvious. I don't know. Yeah. You're not wrong, I just think it was a cool moment. I guess it's the rule of
it was a cool moment. I think it's preferable to him actually being there with a fresh dye job and a fresh cut. And
getting into this place with having entrances.
Having a CGI duel with Driver, which it probably would have inevitably had to have been given Mark Hamill's condition.
But I do think it serves the message of those kids playing with a Luke Skywalker figure, and it's not him, it's what he represents. It's that these kids think he is the all-powerful, amazing, or whatever, and he was just a farm boy, and he rose up to this.
I think thematically it ties in very well. It's one, the myth of Luke is more what we imagine it to be than what it actually is.
And he inspires all those guys to keep on going.
And it makes great sense that that Kylo would be so dead set on destroying the past that he couldn't see in front of him. Yeah. Like I said, thematically it ties in. I think it is a concept that it is a superpower. It is I've been studying a lot of, unfortunately, Greek and Roman mythology for teaching English recently.
Cool.
The gods just show up and do things to make sure our heroes win all the time.
Yeah, they do.
And that's what this felt like. It's not the type of storytelling I want, and I don't think that type of storytelling is Star Wars. I don't need ships blowing up. I don't need any of those illusions or anything else. I think our heroes, though, are not superheroes. They are just scraping by, and that is God coming down and saving the day at the end of it. But like I said, thematically it worked. Storytelling wise, script wise, I think it's a major shortcut. I think is a knock.
Do you want to talk about Leia then?
Yeah, okay. Magnificent flying Leia.
Didn't see it coming.
Well, I'll say this: the first time I saw it, a hush over the crowd.
Yeah,
when we thought Leia had died.
Yeah,
so points to them for pulling that off.
And it seemed, fitting. If Carrie Fisher is dead, I was like, oh, and that'll be it then.
And I actually think from a storytelling perspective, her dying there would have been far more interesting because of what it would have done to Ben.
I agree.
And I also think, other than that moment with Carrie and Spectral Luke at the end, Carrie Fisher has not done much of value in these Star Wars movies besides be there. She lost her fastball a long time ago as a on-screen performer. And, like, I love that she's there. Like, obviously it's Carrie fucking Fisher, but, she just couldn't perform that well anymore.
I like the scene with the dice and stuff.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go back and rewatch New Hope. I don't remember the dice.
I don't know. I think they're hanging in the Millennium Falcon,
but apparently, they're only hanging on New Hope. They're not even in the others.
I think the theory is they're the dice he used to win the Millennium Falcon.
Okay, that makes sense.
I don't know, but even if they'd invented it and they'd never been in it before, I did think that was a nice little moment.
Yeah, and it's something that, even though I didn't remember it, like, I got the significance of it and was touching and all that.
Yeah.
Although, once again, that calls into question. So Luke, even in death, can keep those spectral dice alive for Kylo Ren to pick up before they fade away.
I know.
That
was unnecessary.
That seems questionable.
Yes. Yeah.
That seems questionable on a number of levels.
Yes. Well, Luke is one with the Force.
Anyway,
so
yes, yeah, the Magnificent Flying Leia. My friend called it a major red flag, and with the movie. And it was funny rewatching it because, like I said, I was trying to look for what happens, like how does this movie fall apart for me. And the first 90 minutes, it's basically just we have them tied on the end of a string, and the Magnificent Flying Leia. There's really not a lot in the first 90 minutes that annoys me or takes me or distracts me from the movie. It's stupid. Yes, is it logical? Of course, Leia's extremely powerful in the Force. She's a Skywalker.
She could always sense Luke or Han or whoever.
But she's of course extraordinarily powerful in the Force, but come on. And I know Star Wars plays fast and loose with the effects of space and gravity and all that shit. But dude, you get sucked into space, you fucking die. That's just that is how space works.
Yeah.
And I know there's fire in Star Wars in space, and there's no fire in actual space. I know. You get sucked into space, you die. You don't turn into a CGI person and fly back. And that's what happened, and it was stupid and unnecessary. And they could have come up with a less stupid way of getting Carrie Fisher out of action for a bit.
I will say it does lead to her, reviving and then shooting Poe immediately, which was great, I thought.
It was a great moment, but it was hollow because of the whole issue with why Poe was working against her plan in the first place. There's no... at the end of the day, there's no reason for Poe not to be in on this plan.
Because he's a dumb flyboy. All he knows how to do is shoot stuff.
That you wouldn't... If you were really that concerned about it, you would specifically want him in on the plan, so he knew not to do anything stupid or impulsive.
I don't know. I just like that her and Laura Dern, Vice Admiral Holdo, they were bad bitches. They were sassy. They were smacking this dude down who's got a huge ego and
That stuff's great, but you don't need to do. You can do that without having a stupid plot.
Fine.
And anyway, Leia.
They give her the nice tribute at the end of the credits. I like that.
I thought that should have been the first credit.
I 100% agree.
I was kind of surprised it wasn't. I guess I'm not remembering Dark Knight correctly, but I thought they did this thing with Ledger and the crew member who also died. I thought that was the first credit, but maybe I'm wrong.
I don't remember.
I think the tribute credit should be the first credit.
100%.
But Leia, I guess we can just quickly jump into Leia. Leia doesn't get a whole lot to do. She's there. Yeah. She's there more than she was in the last one. She gets to fire a few guns this time. She has a couple nice moments to play. They give her a little bit more comedy to do as opposed to none in the last one. But she doesn't really get time to mourn Han. She doesn't really get to have major scenes with Ben. And I did read an interview with Hamill that kind of spoiled what was going to happen to Hamill a couple weeks ago, where he said that the real shame of it was kind of by design. The first one was going to be Han's movie, the second one would be Luke's, and the third one was going to be Carrie's movie. And, like I said, I have to unfortunately say, based on the way she performed in the first two, I would not have been terribly excited about unless they really gave her a ton of comedy to do. I don't know if she had the capabilities of pulling it off anymore.
It is weird that the film ends with her alive, and she obviously won't be.
I mean, it seems like the next one's going to start with a funeral, I would imagine.
Sure. She didn't. She wasn't well after all. I guess that... I brought her and him up, but I guess Poe and Laura Dern. Okay, Poe. I love that it opened with him. I think
he's great.
I think we had you know, in episode 7 we had a lot of new characters that I think most people enthusiastically latched onto, like, before the film even came out. Like, you know, this is Rey, this is Finn, this is Kylo, this is Poe, this is Phasma, etc. And, you know, people were enthusiastic about Poe coming out of the thing, but, you know, he's out of that movie for, like, most of it. And I love that they immediately open with him getting to do something significant. And, you know, he's riffing with Domhnall Gleeson as Hux, who, again, you know, gets way more to do that plays to his strengths. But I really like, you know, that opening scene, as you said, and I do really like his little arc here, that he's challenged and smacked down, and he learns a lesson, and, you know, he ends up respecting this person who he thought was an absolute idiot. And he continues to be extremely dreamy.
He's great. I think people would have been really pissed off if Finn did not have much to do in this one. Yeah. But I think we can look at The Force Awakens and see, like, hey, it kind of helped that one of our 4 main new characters was gone for an hour. Sure. Like, it kind of gave the other characters some room. And like I said, I would have understand why people would have been pissed off if that happened to Poe in this one. Yeah. Into Finn in this one. But, you know, I think Poe is a perfect example of how you can do it and why you should do it. Yeah. And I think, you know, Poe's great. He's got a small role. Like I said, I think he's got the most complete and satisfying arc of anybody because it gets the most time. Excuse me, it gets the right amount of time. Sure. And basically no one else gets the right amount of time, unfortunately. But yeah, he's great. He's great. He's really, really... It's a total... It's an effective, like, adaptation of what you would want a Han to be, but, like, only, like, a decent human being by a stretch of imagination. Yeah. Laura Dern.
I think she's good. It's just, I acknowledge everything you said earlier on about, you know, why would she withhold all this from... I think it's a very good performance where, you know, she's wiser than he realizes, and she's more noble than he realizes, and all this. And I don't know, I just thought, in terms of, like, bringing in a character, doing stuff with them, and then killing them off within one film of a much larger series, I thought it was actually pretty well done, considering how much, like, screen time she gets compared to people who arguably need to develop. Like, I'm not that mad at her for existing.
I agree. I don't think the movie had time for her. This movie had time for her. I think, you know, like, it's like I said, unless you want to really sideline Finn, I don't think you have time for characters like this to get as much time as they did. And I would feel the same way about DJ when we get to him. It's like, now, if you, like I said, you can just make the choice to not give Finn as much time. You can make the choice, you can kind of do with him what you did with Maz, which is like, okay, we don't have time for Maz. We'll give her a cameo and move on.
Yeah. Good decision.
Yeah. I will say this. The best shot or sequence in the movie is her death. So
that's really cool. Like, that was such a... I think someone went, wow, when I was watching it out loud.
Rian Johnson is a far more creative filmmaker than J.J. Abrams. And there's a few shots where it's like, okay, I'm glad he's involved for this, at least. Yeah. Finn. He gets a really weird and all incohesive storyline here. He wakes up, his only concern is Rey.
Obviously.
Okay, good. Makes sense, consistent. He very quickly progresses from that to, this cause is over, there's no hope whatsoever, I'm going to abandon ship and try to save Rey. Okay. Seems premature to me, but I can get with it a little bit. I think like it needs more time, but okay. Gets into this whole side adventure with Rose on the shitty billionaire class island or whatever city, and we get a lot of shitty shots of CGI and a lot of shitty deer, like CGI deer, and a lot of green screen comes back here. I'm not really into it at all. How do you feel about it? And then we'll get to the more Finn stuff. Yeah,
I thought it was fun. It just didn't feel in place with everything else that was going on. Like, it felt like a side movie or an anthology thing. Like, all these anthology movies, I think everyone's read it as, oh, it's going to be Boba Fett, or, you know, like all these old characters or side characters, whatever. I wouldn't be against them doing stuff with the new characters as these anthology movies. Yeah. But hey, yeah, I liked it. I mean, it's a little bit corny with the bird dog weird creatures, but I think because of how I feel about Rose and DJ, I think I feel differently about DJ than you do. I sort of liked it. It just didn't feel like it belonged in this film.
Yeah, actually, I would say that I think it gets into some important ideas, and I'll say this about DJ too. I think it touches on some cool ideas, like, hey, guess what? The people, like, this whole thing we've been talking about the whole time, it's kind of meaningless. This whole battle, it's kind of meaningless at the end of the day, and most people aren't really affected by it. And I think that's a kind of a cool story. I think it's a little cheap to kind of just throw it in there, though, for 2 seconds and pretend like it's meaningful. If you're going to go in that direction, go in that direction fully. Don't just throw it in there for like some cheap points with, the people who it appeal to.
Sure. I do think it like serves to. I'll keep bringing up Rogue One because obviously I liked that film did something to try and show what life is like for the common person who isn't a Jedi or a whatever, and I think that's what you do here with Rose and DJ and like life on this little casino-y planet or whatever it is, where Finn is someone who has been raised in the system of the First Order and all that, and then he's heard all the legends, I guess, and he's been caught up in this huge battle for the conscience of the galaxy or whatever, and he is a little bit out of touch with normal people, and I think it is a good little learning lesson for him. It's just the execution could have been done a little bit better.
Yeah, and like I said, I think at the end of the day there just wasn't time for it, unfortunately, especially considering, once again, their whole plan being unnecessary from the start and not helping in any way.
It's so elaborate, like, right, okay,
yeah, it's like
they can track you. What you need to do is go to this weird place where I don't know how I can guarantee he'll be here at this time, but this master codebreaker will be there. He will get you from your ship onto the ship that's chasing you into the place where you can turn off this thing so you can get away quickly. It's like, what? There's no way there's time for this.
For 6 minutes, by the way. Like, it only works.
Yeah.
And don't worry, if you don't find him, you will just end up in the same place anyway with someone else who could do the job for you.
Yeah.
I hate that.
Thieves are drawn to high society.
And remember, this whole plan is only happening based on the stupidity of keeping information from Poe in the first place. This whole story is so contrived. Like, they're just like, how do we get Finn involved? How do we introduce this new character, Rose? Like, how do we all this?
They took matters into their own hands and they failed, and they should have just trusted Leia and...
Well, that's the thing, though. That's the thing. No. Just a second. This is important. It is important, and they did fail. And there are lots of great elements of Greek tragedy in here, like hamartia and peripeteia, all these classic words I'm just going to throw out.
Look at you.
I know. But the key is that when they fail, the whole point of the tragedy is that they fail. They still did not fail. Like, they still all escaped, and they still all survived. They did not fail.
Sure.
Like, you do those things so that the people can fail, and like they're either the hubris of Poe, or Laura Dern doesn't tell Poe because she thinks it's going to leak out that information. Then her very actions of not telling Poe lead to them running into Benicio Toro, who leaks the information out. That's beautiful. That's the beautiful stuff of tragedy.
Yeah.
But they didn't fail. This is not a tragedy.
I feel Finn's come out of this with a different viewpoint, and I feel Poe's come out of this with a different viewpoint, both of which were necessary.
I'm not saying the character arcs aren't there. I'm saying the storytelling isn't there. Like, you have to... Like, Oedipus has to fucking die at the end of Oedipus. Hamlet has to die at the end of Oedipus.
Are you saying Finn needed to get frozen in carbonite, and for us to not know if he was going to be alive or dead?
Poe's hubris needed to get the better of him, or he needs to have his moments where, holy fuck, my actions led to some serious consequences.
Yeah. I mean, he got a lot of people killed at the beginning of that film.
But that's not his... That's the first part. If that happened at the end, if he got people killed anyway because of his... Let's say the first act worked. Let's say the first act worked and not too many people died, and Carrie Fisher said, dude, you gotta cool it. We lost 5 people on this mission. And he's like, blah, 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 I don't need to cool it. Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And then the movie ends with him, like, that's his big moment at the end. That makes far more sense to have all these contrivances, because then all these contrivances are the tragedy of it is that he wouldn't listen, and it led to a bunch of death.
Yeah,
he
didn't
listen, and it worked out.
You're right. You are right.
It's stupid storytelling, and it's a complete misunderstanding of how to use these tragic elements of hubris. and it's stupid.
Sure.
And so Finn, they really rush this moment at the end. They really force this moment of, they can't win and I'm going to die, and they do everything in their power to convince you that Finn is about to die on screen.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying it's wholly illogical that he in that moment would do that. I'm not saying that. I think the moment on the ship, I think just in general enough what we know about Finn is that you could really do that with Finn and it would be believable. They rush it in this movie. They don't spend nearly enough time with Finn for this moment to have the impact that it should have had. Because in reality, theoretically, Finn sacrificing himself like that in a meaningful way would be a great end for the Finn storyline eventually.
Yeah.
And they rush it here. I'll give you credit. But once again, this is another thing. This is like the Spectral Luke thing where it's like, this movie has rushed so much shit, I thought Finn was about to die.
I was about to say I 100% bought it. Because of the thing with Phasma, who I don't think she bears talking about fully, but
I'll give 2 minutes on Phasma.
Okay. Well, I just thought that he got an end, he got a payoff to his storyline with her, and he's had his journey with Rose where he's learned.
I really hope you put storyline in quotes when you said that. Please tell me you put air quotes.
Whatever his journey is, it is complete in that he killed the lady that was representative.
Rude to him several times.
Yes, and was representative of his past and whatnot. I thought, aside from the fact he hasn't had his reunion with Rey, he's basically done... I could see them saying this is all his character was for, and him dying. And then she swerved into him, and I was like, oh, shit.
But I can only see that being the case because of how much other things were rushed in that movie. It's such a big moment for a character to do this. He did not have nearly enough time for it to be meaningful. It's so rushed. And I'll skip over Rose for a second, go right to Phasma. What a fucking waste of Gwendolyn Christie. Gwendolyn Christie is one of the most charismatic fucking action performers in recent memory, if not ever. What a waste. And to pretend that moment with her, where you can see her eye, was in any way meaningful is an insult to us as viewers.
They paid so much lip service heading into it of like, oh yeah, there's going to be more with Phasma, sorry. We know that we sort of did her wrong last time. Wherein, they started setting her up, but then like the end of her journey in the first film is like, oh, she just gets caught like a punk and like really easily.
What a punk in general. Yeah. This... it's a fitting tribute to Boba Fett in the sense that these people look so much cooler, and we convince ourselves in our heads that they are really cool, but really they just are punk-ass bitches who get killed way too easily.
Fuck Boba Fett.
But just what a waste to have. I hope she gets a major action role soon, because to have Gwendolyn Christie here and to not take advantage of her, her action charisma. A great actress in general, I don't want to discount that. But, you're basically only using her for...
stature.
Yeah, but, physical stature, not even...
that's what I meant. Yeah.
It's like, all she does is take and give orders in the first one, is kind of a dick to Finn. Yeah. All she does here is basically die.
Lasers bounce off her or whatever, but yeah.
And that was a cool moment, but man, what a waste.
I feel it's again like Rian Johnson trying to get his money's worth and doing this is something that if you did stuff with her in this film and then a bit more in the next one and then this was her end, it would make sense. So he was trying to end the character, but I don't know, it's weird that they went out and got her and someone obviously designed this cool looking character and then they were like, you know what? This isn't working, let's just kill her.
That's kind of what it felt like. My thoughts when I first saw Phasma in the first extended trailer of Force Awakens was like, holy shit. Yeah. This character is going to be awesome. And then when the movie starts, you're like, oh, Brienne from Tarth is fucking playing the fucking Chrome Trooper. Oh my god, this is going to be amazing. And to what we got from her, what an insult. What a waste and what an insult.
Although, you were always scum. Rebel scum. Pretty good little line there.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
No, it's not. The line where she says, you are always scum, the fact that they think that has any meaning in that moment is an insult to us as viewers. That meant nothing. That meant nothing coming from her. She did not have nearly enough screen time for that to mean anything. She raised him.
She was responsible for him. No, she knew who he was and everything. Yes.
Stop it. make excuses for this one, please. We have a lot of Blade 2 to watch soon. I will save your excuses for Blade 2. Good little tease there.
Do you think I think Blade 2 is like high cinema or something? Sorry, carry on.
Everyone else does.
Okay.
Anyway, so Finn has 2 more characters tied to his general plot. Kelly Marie Tran as Rose. Love her. Love her. So Star Wars. But
I mean, it's going to sound like an insult, but I 100% mean it in a good way. She is like internet fangirls come to life, and I mean that in the sense that I like it when like women are enthusiastic, you know, and like she's a great character, and she has that great line, and so good.
Just knocks that out of the park, and the stuff with the sister is heartbreaking.
Yeah.
You know, she's another character that gets actually the right amount of time, probably, actually, now that I think about it.
Yeah.
It's probably just her and Poe in this one, as far as I'm concerned. Really, really good stuff.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see what she does in the next one.
Yeah.
I'd never heard of her before this movie.
I hadn't either.
I like, you know, just, it's a really tight, cohesive story. It's a character that is flawed, it's not, you can't just like sit here and say like, oh, she just does the right thing all the time. Like, no, like, it's an interesting character.
Yeah.
She goes on a journey here.
And she's like a normal person, and she
and
behaves normally at all times. I think
what I love about a lot of the Star Wars characters, especially the heroes, is that, you know what, when their moment comes, they step up and deliver, and then all of a sudden they're part of the main crew. Like, that's just kind of like how Star Wars works.
Yeah,
she does it. It's great, beautiful. So Benicio del Toro is acting in a completely different movie. I
will always have a soft spot for Benicio del Toro.
I will always have a soft spot for Benicio del Toro too. I like Benicio del Toro, the actor. In a movie that had less going on, I'd be less annoyed, first of all. Second of all, he's him just popping up when they're looking for a codebreaker, and he's not the codebreaker they were looking for. Come on. Like, how did that get past the outline stage of writing this? Like, that's just dumb.
Like, it would have been better if they assumed that guy that's the Master Thief was the Master Thief, and then it turned out it was...
It was actually him. Like, that's why I was for sure thinking that's what they were going through, because I unfortunately did find out Del Toro played a codebreaker, so I knew that's who they were looking for.
And then you see Justin Theroux, and you're like, you're not Benicio del Toro.
Yeah. And I thought that's what they were going to do. Like, he was maybe a stand-in for him. Like, that was his public face or something like that. Like, literally just, no. They end up in the same cell as another codebreaker.
Yeah.
How does that possibly get past any stage of editing or writing, whatever? Anyway, he's mostly fun. I like anytime Star Wars can kind of take you back to, like, hey, not everyone is dead set on, like, not everyone is life and death over this thing.
Yeah.
I think that's a good thing. I don't think they had time to do it properly here. I think the list was a distraction, an unnecessary distraction. I think his general characterization, or no, his general...
Well, like the stuttering and stuff.
Yeah, like all that stuff was kind of just a little too much, a little unnecessary.
I do like him as the kind of voice of reason, where it's like, you know, today they kill you, tomorrow you kill them, and
I love the stuff where Finn's like, you're wrong, and he's like,
maybe I am,
maybe.
Yeah, maybe. I love that, and I think that
I do.
That ties in with my big rant earlier that was hard to sum up, and just the general, what I'm viewing as sort of the new wave of Star Wars, where they're analysing old Star Wars and sort of showing more shades of grey. It does, however, come at the expense of him popping up out of nowhere.
Yeah, I don't like that at all. No.
No? Okay, no.
A couple more loose ends.
Do you want to talk about Snoke? Because
that was one of the loose ends.
Snoke pisses me off.
Let's save Snoke for the end, because I think Snoke is more indicative of the larger issues with Star Wars. And so it'll more transition.
We have the same.
Two more things. Frank Oz comes back as Yoda. It's Muppet Yoda.
I've always hated Yoda.
What?
I've always hated Yoda.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. I would,
I don't like his annoying Muppety ways, where he's, like, annoying. You know, like, you know when Luke doesn't know he's Yoda and he's, like, trolling him? Yeah, I was like, oh, go away.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
I know
he's so iconic
I'm dispassionate about your opinion. I think it's a totally reasonable thing to feel about Yoda.
Fair enough.
Anyway, he's back. It's whatever. It's short. It's brief.
Yeah.
It doesn't overwhelm the movie. If you don't like Yoda, I think you'll survive. as Matt did.
I did. I am alive. This is proof.
The droids. R2 gets the right amount of time, just because we don't need to hang on the past that much.
Yeah.
3PO, I thought some of his lines kind of came off flat. I thought they could have given him some better stuff, and this is not overwhelming. BB-8 has become a superhero very quickly.
Yeah, much like R2 did in episode
the prequels.
2 or 3, I think 3.
Yeah. He's
victim of his own success is what he is.
Yes. I don't like it. We need less godlike droids saving the day. It's not good.
I wrote down that BB-8, R2-D2, C-3PO, and Chewbacca are all in this film.
Yes.
That's what.
Okay, one more thing. I thought the animals were very cute. I had no problem with the animals.
Yeah. Anyone who hates on that, it's like, fucking go look at Ewoks or whatever.
Yeah. I liked all the aliens too on the planet. All good stuff as far as I'm concerned. And actually, before we get to Snoke, one last thing. One thing I really did like about this movie is that Rian Johnson remembered how weird Star Wars is. Go back and watch the first 3 Star Wars.
Yeah.
The first 3 Star Wars are so fucking weird.
Yeah.
The pacing, the sets, like everything about them is weird. They are not standard action movies at all.
No.
They're weird.
Yeah.
And Rian Johnson brought the weird back in a way that J.J. Abrams kind of abandoned for the sake of modern blockbuster storytelling.
Yeah.
Anyway, Snoke.
Yes. Snoke represents a problem I have with Star Wars in that so much story is told in scrolling credits and side material and off camera and in the margin. Who the fuck is this dude? Where did he come from? Why is he dead before we ever find out? I know that's like, oh shit, and it makes it more of a surprise when he dies because you assume there's more coming. But like the general thing of like, oh, so the First Order are just everywhere now after the Empire were allegedly defeated or whatever, and I guess I've sort of made my peace with that now. But just, it's always been a thing, I think, where they just like, oh, and then this happened, by the way. Don't worry about it, here we are, opening of the film. I don't know, it just bothers me when they do that. Maybe it's something that Star Wars fans are just more used to, I don't know. I don't think it's a... if you're into this universe and all of these games and comics and books and TV shows and all that, can flesh out the narrative so much. That's cool for you, but I do think that these films, in a vacuum, should be able to tell their story more effectively than they do.
Yeah. I think in some ways Snoke is a victim of the Abrams-Johnson conflict.
Sure.
That I'm not saying is an actual conflict. I'm saying it's a conflict of filmmaking and storytelling goals. Rian Johnson wanted to burn the world down. Unfortunately... things are set up and stories feel incomplete and half-baked and half-cooked and all sorts of half-done. And Snoke is just the tip of the iceberg there. I mean, once again, like I think this is bad storytelling. It was a great moment. It would be a great climactic moment of this movie with maybe 1 or 2 more Snoke scenes built in. But for him to feel like just kind of a pawn in the larger storytelling... it's just not particularly satisfying when we know nothing about him.
Nothing.
Where he came from, what his motivation is. Like, it was just like Rian Johnson kind of just like, okay, well, he's a copy of Palpatine, let's just jump to step 3 where we get rid of him.
Yeah.
And, okay, but you can't change the fact that the first film exists. Like, you can build on it in different ways, but...
I'm exposing my sort of lack of working knowledge of original Star Wars here, so I'm going to defer to you. But in episode 4, or whenever, what do they say about the Emperor when he's first introduced? Like, when do you get your, like, this is who he is?
In what sense?
I feel like Snoke just exists, and there's no, like, oh, Snoke came from here, and these are his goals, or whatever. And I'm sure they must have done it with the Emperor, because... I mean, I know they would eventually do it with the original trilogy or whatever, but the prequel trilogy, sorry. Original and sense of chronology. But surely they did something to be like, this is... every movie explains who their bad guy is out loud, almost.
I'll say this. Not as much as you probably think they did.
Okay, that's what I feared. Like, why do they keep doing this?
In the first film... we know that the Emperor has phased out the Galactic Senate. And we don't know much more than that. He's kind of just shadowy alluded to. But it's fine, because it's almost better that way than to actually have a half-baked introduction of him. In the second film, he feels much more of a presence. We get like a Skype call between him and Vader.
Yep.
So we get more of a sense of their dynamic as characters, at least, and how they interact with each other. And then the third film, like he's just kind of the leader of the galaxy. And he loves evil. And he loves being evil.
Yes.
And that's his motivation in life. It's super thin and flimsy. Snoke appears mostly to be the exact same thing, only a quarter baked instead of half baked.
I just don't think it cuts it this time around, because this is my thing generally. I think people uphold these characters that they grew up with and everything, but if you actually put a microscope up to a lot of them, they're paper fucking thin. Like, they're cardboard cutouts of, this is our rogue, this is our altruistic hero, this is our villain, this is our villain's boss, all this. And I've loved what they've done with Rey and Finn and Jin and all these characters that there's far more pathos to them, and like I kind of get how they tick, even if some of the performances aren't always amazing. It's just more effort has been made to make these people characters, and then you have fucking Snoke, who is another, and it sticks out more to me now that you are vaguely attempting to flesh out your characters, that you would have someone who comes from nowhere, no explanation of what he is. You don't get a grand, I know that he wants to conquer everything and he wants to get rid of Luke because, as long as there's a Jedi left, people will have hope or whatever, but I was really expecting something to come in where you get some kind of, this is where Snoke came from and how he did what he did. But he's gone, and I'm sure there's a book coming next year that will explain the history of Snoke, but that's not good enough, in my opinion.
Yeah, and even beyond that, it's just like, this felt like Rian Johnson kind of like clearing the board of the useless characters in a way.
Yeah, and then giving it back to the guy that set the board.
Yeah. Like, and I'm of two minds on that. It's like, okay, like, these characters aren't that meaningful. It's hard to care that they are prematurely dead. But why just kind of like surrender that they're paper thin? Why not try to do something with them? Yeah. And why not just wait till Phasma for the next one if you don't think there's time for it now. Or something, what I'm saying, something. Like why rush it? Why rush the depths of both of them?
Yeah. I do think it was cool getting to see the like his elite guard get to actually do something, because I feel in every Star Wars movie there's these people standing off to the side, and the action figures sell a ton and there's all this lore written somewhere, but they never fucking do anything. And it's like, oh cool, they're going to fight someone and prove that they are elite guard. I like that, but
on one hand, yes. On the other hand, what's the excuse this time for why Kylo Ren doesn't use his Jean Grey powers to get rid of them?
My assumption was they were the rest of the kids that he took with him, because Luke says he took some of my students and he killed the rest.
They're not using lightsabers, they're using
whatever those
equipment.
Whatever those weapons are, they seem to have some kind of lightsaber-y.
They have kyber crystal technology in them.
Yeah, what the fuck?
You've seen Rogue One. You've seen Rogue One. You know what kyber crystals are.
Of course I do. And the wills and all that.
I did not. If it came out, that's who they were. Fine.
Yeah. I mean, they may not be. It may just be these are the best of the best from across the galaxy or whatever. But...
I did not get that. My strength was just that they're really good at sword fighting.
Yeah.
And, Kylo Ren can freeze lasers with his mind.
He can, and that was pretty cool when he did that.
Okay, he kills his father. He's emotionally distraught. He doesn't have his full capabilities.
He gets shot as well.
Yeah, I'm all down with that. I think that was perfectly there in the text. Maybe not the best storytelling for Rey to get the best of him, but okay, we're there. I'm there with you. I think at this moment, this is the highest he could possibly be on himself. Mm-hmm. I think he would just be cutting through dudes with his mind, no sword.
Sure.
I think, like I said, if we want to make the point that he couldn't do it before because of this, I don't think that works here. That being said, it was the coolest fucking shot in the sequence of the movie for the two of them to team up there in that moment. Yeah. The way they shot it, the use of slow-mo for a second, the creativity in which they use their lightsabers.
Yeah. All
great stuff. Great stuff. Probably the best, lightsaber thing since the first Vader Luke fight, really. In Empire.
Yeah, maybe you're not a fan of that whole Darth Maul three-way duel.
Well, you've seen my article on it. I think it has some merits.
I have. It's one of the first times I remember being angry at you.
Little did you know, it would just be a weekly phenomenon for the rest of your life.
I get to argue with one of my friends online all the time. Anyway, yes. I don't know, I'm sick of seeing these elite people that don't do shit film after film.
I think that would have been they should have fought like Rey and like Finn or something. I'm sick of super powerful Jedi holding back their powers because it doesn't make sense.
It does like raise the question, not beg it. Why do Jedi and Sith even use lightsabers if they can kill people with their mind, or knock them out with their mind, or make them do things?
Well, that's the thing, is that I would say this. The explanation I could best think of today is that they don't think the Force is an advantage against your typical replacement Jedi or Sith. Like, all things being equal, the only thing that we could separate ourselves with is our swordplay.
But they both have the same weapon. It's the same.
But it's like we couldn't outforce each other, but we might be able to kill each other with a laser sword. That's the only explanation I have.
But I mean, like, the Emperor never uses one, and it's like
he does though.
He's a bad mother. Oh, does he? Oh yeah, no, he does. But then he lightnings his way to glory the rest of the time.
Yeah, that's the least of my issues. But yeah, I mean, I acknowledge it's a hole in the storytelling. All right, Star Wars as a whole. I'm not super enthusiastic for 9 right now. I think I'll feel similar to Force Awakens and Dark Knight Rises with this one. I think I will enjoy it more and more with time. I think I'll be more forgiving of the weaknesses in time. The weaknesses are really there, though, and they are glaring. And it's somewhat frustrating to me as a fan to see so many people ignoring them.
Yeah, you've raised a lot that I haven't actually seen out there. There's so much fighting going on right now between Star Wars fans and each other, between Star Wars fans and non-Star Wars fans. Like, I think I saw a tweet that it was like, the only thing Star Wars fans hate more than people who don't like Star Wars is Star Wars, and that kind of thing. Like, and there's a lot of very silly debate going. It to me, it's the same as like. I linked you to this take that, like, oh, actually, Batman v Superman is good and Justice League is bad. And I feel that we are right about on the cusp of people who spent over a decade trashing the prequels coming out and going, actually, the prequels are really good and these films are bad. Like, you know.
I can send you that very article right now if you want. It's on the Daily Beast, and the title is actually, the Star Wars prequels don't suck.
I will not read that, and I'm angry it exists. You know, just fucking... calm down, everyone. You know.
Well, you know, I haven't been diving into the debate for two reasons. One, I didn't want you to see my tweets and then know how I felt before we started talking.
That's very considerate of you.
You're welcome. Two, though, the anti-Star Wars, anti-Last Jedi side right now has been mostly composed of people yelling that there's too many women and that the movie's too funny. So
yeah, I know, right? Why is there all this comedy as opposed to those first 3 where there's like jokes all over the place?
Yeah, I'm not getting lumped in with that group.
Nope.
So hence why I brought my notepad, and I'm going to have an extensive list of things of concerns I have.
Good. I'm glad that you have the concerns you do and not those ones, because my God, I remember getting into an argument with someone when the Rogue One trailer came out, and I think someone like attacked Gary Whitta, who was one of the writers on it, for like how many women there are. Just, you know, if anyone has these opinions, do fuck off.
Yeah, I saw a tweet comparing Rose to, someone thought Jar Jar Binks was the worst character ever. Hold our beer. Picture of Rose. I'm like, what?
How are they? Oh my God. Rose is a triumph. It exists. Like, these films don't do anything to however you feel about the others. Like, enjoy them, don't enjoy them, do whatever. Like, they just exist. Just calm the fuck down. This is not a sacred text in the history of humanity.
I'm a little sad this movie is not the home run I want it to be. I'm coming to terms with what it is, but you know, I do think if you love something, you need to be extra hard on it, and
sure,
this one does not hold up to scrutiny.
That sums you up very well, actually.
Yeah. I get a perfect example is, if I compared this and like Star Trek Beyond side by side, I'm sure I would say this one is better. But I don't care about Star Trek. I don't love Star Trek. Like, Star Trek's just like a thing that exists in the periphery of my fandom of movies and geek culture. So, like, I don't care the weaknesses about Star Trek Beyond. I care about the weaknesses here. I think these films can be better than those weaknesses.
I think that's how I feel about Star Wars.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fine.
I think it all goes back to that I didn't watch them as a kid. So they were never special to me. But I do like... I'm more enthusiastic about Star Wars since Disney bought it than I was. Not because Disney bought it, but, you know. I'm more excited after seeing these films than I've ever been for Star Wars.
I mean, obviously I love it more than you, and obviously they're a huge part of my childhood.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this is the first Disney direction where I'm kind of just like, we may not have all of our ducks in a row right now. And there's a good chance Solo is bad.
Yeah.
Like, this is not a shot at Paul Bettany, but if you've written a movie where you can replace Michael K. Williams with Paul Bettany mid-production, I have an issue with your script. Like, I think your script has some holes in it. That's what that tells me right then and there.
I feel bad for Donald Glover right now.
And Ron Howard has not exclusively made bad movies in his career, but, you know, as someone has said, he has never been a horny director. He's not someone you go to for this super, like, powerful movie or anything like that. Like, he's a 9-to-5er. He's a lunch pail director.
Yes.
And
I think that was the idea when they fired the...
Oh, no, I'm sure it was. And it's a rational decision from their point. Like, hey, let's make sure we have a movie. And
because we made some promises.
Yeah. I get the premise of that decision. It just doesn't mean I have to be excited to see the movie or have a great deal of faith in it. Also, you know, the rumors about the lead actor having to take acting classes in the middle of the production because they were concerned is troubling as well. And I also have to say this. I think I'm more looking forward to Rian Johnson's separate trilogy that has nothing to do with the main storyline than I am happy that he and J.J. Abrams are like going to have like this crossbreed of filmmaking choices make up this trilogy, because I think this movie kind of, its issues can be summed up like this. It just had way too much to do, and part of the issue is that it had to continue stories that this director clearly had no interest in continuing. It had to continue a style that this director clearly had no interest in continuing. It had to reincorporate a tone that was more in line with the original Star Wars, which is the quirkiness, the weirdness, the odd pacing. And it had a million character arcs to go through. You know, it was just far too ambitious. I don't hate ambitious movies, but I'm not going to kneel down at the altar of them just for the sake of ambition.
Fair enough.
This is, for Star Wars, this is my Dark Knight Rises. I will grow to love it in time, probably, but I am going to pick it apart endlessly.
Did you want to try and rank them?
Yeah. The prequels are the bottom 3. Obviously, I don't really care which order.
I thought most people felt significantly better about 3 than 1 and 2, and they don't care whether 1 or 2 is the bottom.
I have grown to hate 3 and 2 more with time. 1 has, like, sand. At least it has, like, some, like, real life in there. And I think Liam Neeson probably gives the most consistent performance, even if his character is kind of stupid.
He's very stupid.
It's a very stupid character, but I think Liam Neeson kind of is, like, charismatic enough to get through it in a way that I think no one else really was, even poor Ewan McGregor. So I will tentatively say that is my favorite of the prequels, but the caveat being all 3 of them are terrible. It's a question of which Jedi is the next that comes after that. I have Rogue One over both Jedi films. Both films with Jedi in the title, in case anyone was confused.
Yeah.
Their strengths are similar. Like I think what I'll always think of with both films with Jedi in the title is the opening sequence being my favorite thing in the movie. I think the rescue of Han is one of the best sequences in all of Star Wars. It's just followed by a very milquetoast Star Wars film. Everything about Luke and Vader and the Emperor is pretty perfunctory. You kind of know how it's going to go. And the stuff with the fucking Muppets down on Endor is tedious. I'll put that one next just because it wasn't as ambitious. So we'll go Return of the Jedi, Last Jedi, Rogue One, Force Awakens, New Hope, Empire. Empire's won. Empire's always won. Okay. No one's ever going to beat Empire.
Okay.
Do you have a ranking?
I guess. I really hate Return of the Jedi. Like, so much. I don't know.
You hate it more than the prequels?
I don't know if I'm bold enough to put it last, but I hate it more than I hate Episode 3, for sure.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Dude, Dark Anakin murdering children. That's badass. I guess 2, 1, 6, 3. I will say I think Rogue One is my favourite Star Wars movie. I know how many flaws it has, but it did something that none of the others ever did for me. Just make me care, so it's my favourite for that reason. Followed by Empire is number 2. I like Last Jedi more than Force Awakens. I think I like A New Hope more than Force Awakens. I think I like this more than A New Hope.
Okay.
There you go. Different rankings there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Lots of passion in our rankings.
So much passion as I lazily list off the films and forget which ones even exist.
All right. This has been a 2-hour conversation about Last Jedi.
I think that's fitting. I think we had a lot of stuff to cover.
We will probably be back in 6 months to discuss Han Solo if Matt cares enough to watch it.
Is it coming out in June? I thought they were sticking to their Christmas thing.
I have no idea why they're breaking it up for some reason.
Weird.
Yeah,
okay, yeah.
Like
I'll go see Han Solo. I'm curious. I love Donald Glover. I want him to succeed in life. Yeah, okay. We'll be back for that. In the more immediate future, we have a Christmas episode planned in which we'll be reviewing Kiss Kiss Bang Bang and Carol, which we hope to get recorded soon and up before Christmas. That'll be nice. As I said at the beginning of the show, we are hoping to come back at you with Blade as our next podcast miniseries, and then eventually tackle the beast of True Detective. Ben and I are launching Ben and Matt's Marvelous Journey, wherein we are going to go through every single film in the MCU, starting with Iron Man, which will debut January 3rd, I think. I think that's a Wednesday. Idea being there is a new episode every Wednesday, which will culminate in the 10th anniversary of the MCU, handily enough. If you're sitting there criticising the maths, I also realise that. We're going to do Homecoming as sort of a smaller episode off the schedule because me and Mike already talked about it, so we'll just whack that one at the side and then everything else works out fine. And yeah, we may be doing something with Lost. I say we. Stay tuned. Yeah, it will not be us. Enter therealworld.com. 2 E's in real world. Entertherealworld.com. Lots of articles, lots of podcasts. Mike's going to be posting his Star Wars article soon, hopefully.
It is in the outline stages, hopefully done by tonight.
There you go. I'm going to go edit this. And by the time you hear it, I will have done that, obviously. This has been Into the Real World. This has been Star Wars. It's been 2 hours. Good Lord. Farewell.